Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am going to let people know that we are live and then we're going to jump into it because it's going to be kind of an emotional roller coaster tonight, I think. So, as people are coming in, definitely let us know where you're coming in from and we will get this showboat rolling. Hello, Sam. Welcome. And then I'll pull you guys in. Hello from Missouri. Missouri.
Hello.
Okay. How you doing, Amanda? How's your husband doing? Hello from Tucson, Arizona. Looks like we have Georgia. We have Tennessee. I know we have Pennsylvania. So people from all over the country are tuning in.
Great.
California.
Great.
So it looks like we have New York's, New Orleans, Louisiana. So, yes, I can do that for you, Oki. She's from Oklahoma. So, yeah, welcome everybody. I let people know that we are going to be doing an interview tonight. Okay, Nebraska, welcome, North Carolina. So, I think we have at least 25% or 50% of the country represented in some way, shape, or form. It is, and I think this is something that you guys probably haven't seen before. Correct?
No, no, not at all. Yeah, it's been really quiet up here.
Yeah, and
no,
Renee and I don't.
Corellin. Yeah.
Okay, so just welcome to the Patriot News Network. We're glad that you guys are here, and I'm glad that you guys responded after me not saying anything since Saturday because I didn't see the message. So,
well, thank you for having us, and we're glad to be here.
Right.
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I think a lot of people are wondering. They see Justice for Kadira.
It's Justice for Kadira.
Kadira. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I will butcher the name many times. I apologize right away. I do not intentionally mean to do that.
We understand.
Yeah.
But tell us what in your words, I mean, we see Justice for Kadira. Told you I was going to butcher it.
You said it right. Kadira. Yeah, that's right.
So for people that don't really know what's going on, can you give us a brief synopsis? I mean, from I've heard your side, but Renee, can you tell us in your words what it is that is what are you are trying to focus people's attention on?
Well, first of all, we want to expose the racism and the corruption, and it seems to be running all throughout our government, from the local all the way up to the federal level here in Portland and in the state of Oregon. So what we're trying to do is expose it.
Okay, and so people. Okay, so guys, just to give you kind of a background from, I was talking to, yeah,
Corellin.
Ellen, sorry.
You're totally fine. People get my name wrong all the
It's
time.
okay.
It's totally, yeah. Don't worry about it.
But I was talking to you today, and I really kind of got into it. The message that you sent me originally that kind of piqued my interest. I'm gonna read it to people just so they understand kind of what was originally sent and why we ended up getting there. And the first message that I got was a live feed from you guys down in front of the Portland city offices.
Yeah, we protest down in Pioneer Courthouse Square, so right in the middle of the city.
Okay. So, and right away, you guys, the first thing, like I told you, I got about 15 minutes into it and I had to shut it off. I was already fried. And that's to say the least. Because I mean, coming from former clinician and having worked in the hospitals and knowing what the hospital code of conduct is, I mean, at least in my state, but I've seen it in other states as well. To see that kind of behavior from a hospital or even the police department, it really bothered me. So that's when I reached out to you and we started messaging back and forth. And here was the response that you sent me to what I said. We are just trying to get the word out. We need coverage of the story. The city of Portland is working hard to keep this covered up because they have absolutely no defense for what happened here. And I mean, from what I heard from the city of Portland, and everybody else that I've talked to, that's absolutely a fact. So people are wanting to know what your what the backstory is. What is the story? And I know there's stuff with you, Renee, in regards to Nike.
Yeah,
but we could cover that in a different segment.
Yeah, that's just it. All kind of snowballs together. But I mean, I really focus on April 12th, 2007, because that's
where it kind of all really started.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna let you guys just have the floor and take us back to April 7th.
It's April 12th.
April 12th. Sorry, 2007.
So
I knew I had a 7 in there somewhere.
So Kira had met Sophie in kindergarten, and so they had been friends, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and Kadira would very occasionally go play at Sophie's. Sophie was really, really incredibly pushy about her staying the night. Sophie and Sophie's dad, they were constantly asking us because we kind of were like, we didn't want to do overnights, but they kept being very pushy. Sophie would call all the time. I mean, and her and Kadira were friends, but it was kind of
and Sophie was a nice little girl.
I mean, she was nice, but she was just a little pushy about her coming over, and her parents were a little pushy about having Kadira over. But I mean, we were new to the neighborhood in terms of, I had grown up in the neighborhood, but when we married, we bought this house for my mom, and then we moved here. So I had been gone for a while, came back, and the environment was a little bit different. The neighborhood used to be, I was telling you, the neighborhood used to be like mostly working working class, mostly white people, but working class, but it kind of changed to, it's a pretty wealthy neighborhood now. So we were definitely having trouble fitting in. So it was kind of nice when we moved to the neighborhood that, Kadira was making some friends, and Sophie was one of them. And one of the things in particular, I guess I don't want to miss about this is my husband's father actually died March 20th of 2007. So we had gone down to Sacramento to bury him, and it was a pretty rough time. And when we got back from the funeral, Sophie wanted to see Kadira, and because we'd been out of town for a couple weeks, and And so she was pushing to have an overnight on the night of April 12th, 2007. And Renee was never really comfortable with overnights. Like I said, we both kind of weren't. But that night we just kind of decided, okay, you know, because it's really depressing around here. And Sophie, they said Sophie got a new kitten and they were going to play with the kitten and this and that.
We wanted Kadira to be happy after having come from the funeral. If this was an opportunity for her to do that, then you know, we were okay with that. We wanted that.
And she'd been over, she'd spent the night maybe a couple times before over there. When Sophie had like some parties. So it wasn't like completely foreign, but it wasn't like, it just wasn't something we did all the time. But anyways, we let it go that night. And so I dropped Kadira off at like 5 o'clock, and they only live 3 blocks away. We live on 54th and they live on 51st. And then that night, I think we had like a window salesman or something over to our house. And we were just kind of doing that. And when I went to go, after all of that was done, I went to go put the kids to bed, and my 4-year-old daughter, who's Kadira's sister, Kamaya,
she wanted to say goodnight.
No, she before she wanted to say goodnight, she kind of went to bed, but she woke up crying and saying that we needed to call Kadira. I mean, this was her sister, like around 9 o'clock, something like that. And I said, Kamaya, she's fine. She's at an overnight. So at this point, she's been at their house maybe 4 hours because I dropped her off around 5. And Kamaya woke up and said, Mom, you got to call Kadira. And I said, Kamaya, she's fine. She's at an overnight. You'll see her in the morning. She said, no. She became hysterical. This is just a 4-year-old child. She became hysterical. She started screaming and crying. She said, no, Mommy, you have to call Kadira. Something's wrong. So I called Kadira thinking she was just going to, I called over there thinking I was just going to talk to Kadira, and Kadira was going to calm her sister down and it was going to be, fine.
I'm going to say goodnight and
that was going to be the end of it. But when I called, Amy picked up the phone and she said, did you get my message? And I said, no. And she said, well, Kadira got a burn. And I said, oh, do I need to come? Because I was thinking like a very tiny burn. Like I'm thinking they were baking cookies. I did not think what I walked into. And she said, yeah, you need to come. But she didn't make it sound like an emergency, just kind of like I needed to come pick her up because she said she wanted to go home. And actually, I haven't sent you to this, Shane, but we have a message that was left on our machine prior to when I called that we didn't receive, but it's a voice call from Amy saying that Kadira got a burn and that she wants to go home. I'll send it to you and you can hear it. So when I got there, she opens the door. Her face is all kind of flushed and red. And she just kind of led me down the dark hallway. They kind of have this weird long house. And she took me down into their basement. And Kadira was wrapped in a towel on their couch, naked, completely naked. And she had a huge burn on her leg, no skin at all. And she was screaming and crying. Her face was completely swollen. And she was just
I'm gonna show the audience what the burns look like. So guys, just so people are aware, these can be construed as graphic. So viewer discretion is advised. And I have to throw that in there because it's
bad.
Yeah,
they're bad.
Really bad. So I didn't want to interrupt you guys, but I want people to understand.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
What you're looking at.
So these were pictures that we actually took about 6 days after she was seen at the hospital.
Yeah, I think.
And we took them because it seemed like somebody should be cataloging what her injury looked like because it was so bad. So I wound up getting a digital camera and taking these photos.
And that's actually the hand you see in there. That's actually us. Cause like I said, we cared for that wound by ourselves. What can't really be seen in the photos and what can be seen in some of the later pictures is a lot of the 1st degree area, which actually extends quite below the even the open areas. So, so that's what we found that night. And so I rushed her to, we rushed her to Providence St. Vincent's.
The burns were from
scalding water from a tea kettle.
Scalding water from a tea kettle. We'll get into this a little later,
Right.
but these people testified to playing some game called Little House on the Prairie.
And the dad boiled up a tea kettle full of scalding water, and he took it down to the mom, and she burned Kadira. And that's about what we know about what happened.
But there's never been any official investigation, so we don't exactly know what happened at their house. All we know is what Kadira told us, and what they said at the trial.
Right.
Anyway.
So we took her to Providence St. Vincent's, and we were seen that night for 17 minutes. 17 minutes.
In the ER.
In the ER. They put her back. They gave her a vial of Motrin. They wrapped her leg. The leg was literally wrapped from like side to ankle. And then they just handed her to my husband and told us to go home.
They didn't tell us that they weren't treating her. They didn't tell us that she needed to be hospitalized or that she should go to the burn unit, because we actually have one of the best burn units here on the West Coast at Emmanuel Hospital and Legacy Emmanuel, and nobody said anything about a burn center.
Well, they didn't say anything about anything. They just basically, I mean, we were in and out of there so fast, there isn't much to that first encounter. I mean, they didn't give us any bandages, supplies, what to do next, nothing. It was just kind of like
they just told us if it got worse, bring her back in, or take her to her doctor in the morning.
So basically, she was just released in shock and unable to walk. That's what happened that night. And when we came home,
yeah, and they talk. So I was reading through the medical record just before we went live, and they were talking about, and even the doctor. So I looked at it and I was like, this is kind of amazing. So they just gave her the Silvadene 1% topical, which was to be used. And I mean, you actually, I have a lot of nurses that are on. So I'm trying to, I have a lot of nurses that are on the chat.
mm-hmm.
And Sam the barber is a nurse, and this is what should have happened.
Yeah,
she didn't get any fluids. They didn't even put a blood pressure cup on her. We were young parents. We were traumatized. Actually, when Corellin brought Kadira home, and I looked at the burn for the first time, my expression or the first words out of my mouth was, "What is that?" Because I was just so in shock, and we didn't even know what to do at that point. Corellin called her mom, and her mom was like, "Take her to the hospital." And so we went directly to the hospital from there. And these people, they turned us around so quickly, and they told us that, oh, she's fine and she's going to be okay, which we wanted to believe.
Well, and it's just you're so trained to something that this experience has taught me through the years, is that we are so trained to just accept what the authorities say. Like, we actually, when they told us to go home, we went home.
We went home.
And when I went back the next day, so I took her to OHSU the next day. The first night we were at Providence St. Vincent's, and you'll see in there, where is it? I'm just looking at what you're showing. Yeah,
So,
she makes it sound like she looks fine.
Yeah, she makes it sound like she looks fine, but she was not.
This is the thing that really gets me is typically with anytime you have like a burn, and they admit to a third degree or a second degree there.
Yeah, and then and you'll see at OHSU the next day they're saying
It's second to third degree.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
there was no
But
skin on her leg.
the fact that they didn't actually admit her and take the precautions of making sure that it was flushed and so on and so forth. That's
Or that she could walk. She couldn't walk. I
She
mean,
couldn't
we
walk.
left out of there like she could not walk. We were carrying her
And
yeah.
if you look in
back and forth to the toilet. Like she could not, because it was on a joint. And I mean, she still has problems with that leg to this day.
they did not call CPS. They didn't call DHS. They didn't call the police. They didn't notify anybody.
Well, most people can't even like go to the bathroom in 17 minutes. So, I mean, that's the length of time that basically we spent there. It wasn't very long. And then the next day at OHSU, I ended up going to OHSU myself the next day with her. And
one of the first things we did though the next morning was I called for homeowners insurance because it was a bad injury, and I felt like, well, we're gonna need to make sure that she's gonna get whatever she needs.
well, and we needed to go back to the hospital and that. So yeah, and that's been used against us repeatedly.
Yeah,
Ever since this happened, because nobody was doing anything. Like the night of the burn, the authorities should have just stepped in.
yeah.
Obviously, when
definitely.
we were at the hospital, but they didn't, because
Yeah.
there was no intention to treat her. And actually, if you show them, yes, the treatment plan that night was blank.
There was no
So,
treatment
and she
plan.
could have been dead within hours,
She could have died, and
which nurses and doctors looking at that would know that. So, that was it. The treatment plan that night was blank.
yes, the skin is an organ.
Yes.
But we didn't know that at the time.
No.
We were just trusting the doctors. All of them. We saw several of them at
Well,
OHSU.
yeah, when I took her back to OHSU the next day, we saw a Dr. Sarah tubing scene, and all she did was unwrap the wound. She looked at it, and then she called like a couple other doctors to look in the room, just left me and Kadira sitting in the room, and didn't give her any medication, didn't do anything else. And then she just came back in, she wrapped up the wound, and she said, "It's going to be fine. Just go to the store and get some bandages and Silvadene and do 3 times daily wound care."
They told us to do
Yeah,
that.
they told us to do
They
that.
didn't tell us how to do it. There was no home health. Nobody came over to supervise us changing these bandages.
They
but
didn't. I mean,
every
nothing.
time
There was
we
just nothing.
unwrapped her wound, we were traumatized over and over again.
And my other kids at 2, 4, and 6 witnessed this, so they also went through a lot of trauma, because we just had her up in our room, in our bed, doing these bandage changes, and I mean, she went through all of this with no
Hardly
medicine,
any medicine.
just Motrin. I mean, but even that, I think they gave her some. What at OHSU they gave her some Tylenol with codeine, but we couldn't give her that because she said it was making her feel funny. I mean, she was having issues like breathing funny. I mean, and just not all the way around. We didn't really know what we were observing, and so I mean, all we can tell you is
And
what
they weren't
what we
trying
were
to help
doing.
us understand it.
No, I mean, well, there was nobody here except for us, and then, like I said, my neighbor and a friend of mine did see, when we were doing the bandage changes, and my mom. So there are actual witnesses that saw the burn beyond, just people in our family. But it was very traumatic for our kids. And it's like later on when people ask us about the wound, there isn't much we can say. Like we couldn't measure it. We didn't know what we were doing with it. All we did was unwrap it, put Silvadene on it, and rewrap it. And it was just a very long process because she would scream and cry. I mean, it was torture for her, and it was torture
the bandages
for us.
would get stuck to the wound, and we'd have to tear it off, and she'd be screaming in pain. And there was no way that we could help her. There was no. She should have got a morphine drip. She should have got fluid. She should have got all kinds of stuff that she didn't get, that they weren't even explaining to us that she needed.
I did call the hospital a couple days into changing a bandage, and there is a record of that. I'm not sure if it's in the docs here, but I'll make sure you have everything. There may be some pieces missing out of that, but I did call and I said I thought the wound was getting infected, and there's actually transcript of that, and the doctor says nope, don't do that. You have that one.
I read. Okay, so guys, just so the audience is aware, I am kind of hiding personal information in regards to your daughter's name,
Okay. I mean, her name's
addresses,
been out
and all
there.
that stuff, because quite honestly, you guys have been through enough. We don't want to expose exactly where you live because safety is paramount. But I did kind of give people a heads up that this was going to be kind of a shocker of an episode. Normally, I like to have a little bit of fun, but sometimes it's a lot of seriousness. And this is just one of those times that you hear the story, you hear everything that's going on, and the raw emotion, and actually seeing the wounds and hearing about the actual torture that basically
It was torture.
burn care is not fun.
Yeah.
But if it's done properly and with the right sedatives and so on and so forth, people could have pretty good success rates. And yeah,
it wasn't just the ER too. It was, I mean, OHSU. We had taken her there several times, and it'll come out that there were blood tests that showed that she was in internal distress, which OHSU did not reveal to us.
So those were taken 8 months after she was burned, because after Kadira was burned, she was seen many times because she was having breathing problems and rashes. And I believe that was all coming from the internal distress. Her leg was extremely disfigured. I wish I had a picture of that. I wish you had a picture of that in the doc share, the disfigurement of her leg. But that's also on our sign that was in the speech that you can see. But and we have more of those photos. But those were all signs of an internal infection. So she was going back and forth to the doctor. They just literally were not doing anything for her. And I to this day, OHSU, will not explain, and we stopped going there. So,
but they won't talk to us about anything in her records. They won't
talk to her about anything in her records. So nobody, and Providence St. Vincent's won't talk to us. They won't explain why there wasn't an investigation. They won't explain why they labeled this an accident.
Yeah, they labeled this an accident in their records without any kind of investigation, without involving the authorities at all.
And if you look at the ER report, you'll see it says the one thing she does say is she was standing on the ledge of a bathtub and there was a tea kettle of scalding water. So why there was no investigation, and we don't even know if that's what happened, because that's not what the parents say happened. As you'll see in the transcripts of what they actually said happened, there's all different kind of stories about what was going on that night in terms of how the water actually contacted her leg. Although it all boils down to Amy does say, yes, she poured it on her directly from her hands. So
moving on in the story, though, after we were doing these bandage changes and I had called for insurance information, there was an insurance adjuster who came over from State Farm Insurance to take pictures of Kadira and the injury to her leg. And we felt really strange about it. And I was going through some stuff at work, and we didn't have any time to deal with the other parents or the insurance company. So we called an attorney. I went to actually Stephen P. Reidlinger at Suzak and Powell, because he had handled an injury for me before. So I just went to him naturally. And then a little bit after that, an attorney called us by the name of Scott Kocher, who said that he does child abuse cases and he does child burn cases, and these need to be handled with care. And so we were like, okay, well, that's great, because we really need some help with this. And so he did not call the authorities. He didn't call the police or anything like that. And what you'll find in the deposition testimony is that a really bad rumor about us just wanting money after our daughter was harmed is what started to propagate. And so we wound up going, we didn't know, there was.
Well, we just didn't ask Scott anything pretty much because we were dealing with our daughter. And so he let this go on for 16 months. He said he was looking into it. I see somebody's asking if the other parents got in trouble. No, they did not. The other parents never, ever had to talk to the police. They still
or
have
DHS.
Not. Or DHS.
Or anybody.
They've never, ever been basically contacted.
Questioned at all by the authorities.
No, they've been fiercely protected by the community. Scott basically said, "Oh, this is what you have to do to get this case handled." He said, "I have to be my own daughter's guardian ad litem."
So he made her the guardian ad litem,
which I didn't know what that was. I didn't perform the role whatsoever in the so-called, because he filed a civil proceeding, but he filed it as a case of civil child neglect, and that's what the paperwork reads.
Yes.
And he only made it me against the other mom, and then basically he took us to this trial where it was just us and the other family, and our daughter didn't even come because we didn't want her to come because she was very mentally and physically fragile at the time and still very disfigured and just not well. And it pretty much, the trial is pretty much them accusing us of trying to hurt them because we were making a big deal out of nothing. That's how you can pretty much sum up the paperwork. And the trial was only a day and a half. They sat up there. They said they were playing Little House on the Prairie. They said they had bathed our daughter on another occasion.
As evidence, they used the Odyssey program.
They used Portland Public Schools' actual material, like Odyssey program materials, as evidence, and like pictures of our daughter that they had taken of her at school and at their house. It was a very strange proceeding. And then there was 12 white people on the jury, and they supposedly go back to a jury room there to look at pictures of our daughter. They put no pictures on any kind of
big screen,
big screens. Like they didn't show. I don't know what Scott offered as evidence. He had all the evidence in these very similar looking folders, and he'd hand them to the jury. And I didn't even know. We didn't even know what was in any of the documents. Anyway, they went back into this room. We could hear them laughing, and I mean loud laughing. It's very loud. Like you could hear, like, 2 rooms over. And then they came out, and then they said these people were not negligent at all. And they, in fact, awarded them court costs and attorney's fees. And when we were sitting out in the hallway, because I ran out of the courtroom screaming and crying. I mean, it was awful. It was the most awful day of my life. I thought I was going to die. I really thought I was going to die because, I mean, I was basically put in charge of her case, and Scott told me that it was all my fault, that this had went this way because I was responsible, and basically we shouldn't have sued them, even though there was, I guess, let me roll it back. There was one mediation, and at one point they offered $25,000 settle everything, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was looking to him for help, and he said, "This is an absolutely outrageous offer." He said, "I never counsel anybody to walk out of a mediation, but I'm counseling you to walk out of this mediation right now because this is outrageous." And then he turned around, I guess, in the complaint and asked for $300,000 or something like that. He never told me what he was going to do, though. He never showed me anything.
He never told us.
Went through anything.
He didn't tell us that these people were their defense was they were playing a game.
No, and he never told us that. So, I mean, when we went out into the hall, their attorney, Rudy Lockemeyer, actually came out in the hall, and he was screaming at my husband. He said, "Do you see what you did to their family?" And then he's like, I'll tell you.
No regard for the safety, well-being, or care for our daughter at all.
So, yeah. And at this point, my husband had been fired and blacklisted from Nike, which is another story. But he definitely said, well, we'll see if we can work out, this basically $9,000 we now owe them. And he was like, because your husband's just a welder. My husband was trying to get into welding at the time and eventually became a carpenter. But just very, very nasty. And then when we tried to pursue it further, we tried to ask Scott, like, what happened? He just said, "I'm not doing anything more for you or your daughter. You win some, you lose some, and this is over." He was at our house, actually. And And my husband said, he said, Scott, Kadira is not your daughter. And he said, I'm going to tell you right now, you better button it down and walk away. He got right up in my face, inches from my face, button it down and walk away.
That's what Scott
And
Kadira's supposed attorney
this is
said
what
to
her
us
attorney
after
after the trial.
yeah, after the trial.
He should be disbarred.
Oh, he absolutely.
We did try to contact the Oregon State Bar, and they said he went to Harvard and he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. They refused to do, they didn't do anything to Scott. And
There was
then
no investigation. There was
no, they never even looked into what he did. And I filed a complaint. I mean, I said him and Rudy Lockenmeyer conspired to cover up a crime, because that's sure as hell what it looked like to me.
So
And-
after hearing about this so-called game, that's when my wife and I decided to call the police.
Yeah, and we also, that was another thing, we called the police, and Scott was really trying to also tell us not to call the police. And then a police officer came to our house and he said, you're not allowed to file a report. Absolutely. You are not allowed to file a report or talk about this at all. And then when we called,
I thought that was weird, so I actually took
Yeah.
I took Kadira down to the Portland precinct downtown, and an officer finally took a report.
and that's where it stopped.
That's where it stopped.
That's where it
They
stopped.
took a report. They accepted it as a report of child abuse, and they wondered why we didn't come to them sooner, and we just didn't understand what was going on. But when we finally did hear about this game, that
As soon as we
people
heard
were
them
playing-
say, I mean, if we had been sitting in the depositions of, I think at any time, I mean, yes, we were very traumatized, but the minute they said they were playing a game, it was like, okay, what is going on here? It didn't take long for our brains to go,
something's
something
wrong.
is really, really wrong. Because
Something's really wrong.
at this point, we didn't even realize the hospitals hadn't treated
No,
her.
we
Because the
didn't.
hospitals acted like
They were
what we
treating
did
her.
at home was the treatment. And actually, another thing that's been thrown in our face a lot is people will go through the documents and they'll say, you testified that she was all healed. And it's like, I'm not a
We
doctor.
didn't know that.
I have a high school education. I don't know. All I know is what I was being told. Okay, yeah, some skin grew back over her leg, and she eventually walked again, not because anybody helped her do that, a medical staff. Me and my husband were just here alone, just doing the basic care that we could do, and kind of what Alexander had said, okay, it looks like he said
this
it
was our next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And he was a
nurse in the Israeli army. So he basically said it looked like what we were doing was okay, but he also
was traumatized.
did not have the wherewithal to say, how come your daughter's not in the hospital? I don't think anybody in the community did, because I think we are so trained to listen to our authorities that we don't even question things anymore.
Especially under times of distress and trauma. So this was all starting to come together for us. After we talked to the police, there was a shallow investigation done by the DHS. A DHS worker came to interview us.
And that was it. That was
They
the
did not
investigation.
interview Todd and Amy. They did not interview Sophie.
And that's also a very suspicious record, because the only thing, I mean, it says in there that, the incident as described by the child appears accidental. But I mean, even when they showed up here all the months later to look at Kadira, yes, she still had the scar, because she still has the scar to this day, from where the wound closed up. And they didn't even at that time, take pictures or look into anything further. So it was just one distressing thing after the other, because it's like we went to DHS and then we realized, okay, you're not even going to talk to the other family. The parent, the police aren't going to get involved. They just closed her case
without any investigation.
Without any investigation, as undetermined. And that record is also very weird, because there's like some whited out things about my husband in there.
There's redacted information on the DHS report that we got. We tried to get a copy of her police report. The police refused to give to us because they say that it contains reports of child abuse.
And they also refused to give it to Kadira, because she did just she tried recently, she's 22 now, to get her report. And she still they're still refusing to give it to her. So I have no idea what's in that police report and why they're, holding it so close to their chest. But because all the other information out there is unfortunately
Public.
Public. It's very hard to hide her name or even hide where we are, because people do really know. They know who we are.
You guys have had a voice, and I mean, quite honestly, people have been trying to stifle it, and people were asking earlier, how do we help you guys? Guys, we're right now, I don't know if people have noticed, we are streaming on Facebook, we are streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Share this interview.
Yes, please.
Send it to as many people as you possibly can, because quite honestly, when we talk every night about how to move causes forward and how do we continue on, these are the things that matter to people. These are real lives that are actually being destroyed, or in some way, shape, or form. But as far as attorneys, sounds like, from what you guys were telling me earlier, you guys have been pretty much blacklisted by the attorneys.
Yeah, by the illegal community here. And what we learned after because we tried to go after no attorney would help us after that trial. Not one single attorney. We've been all over the city. We've actually been all over in the neighboring states looking for some kind of representation to help us. But what we learned after trying to go, so we went after Scott ourselves, and we went after the hospitals ourselves, pro se. Actually, since we're not attorneys, we didn't have the legal authority to represent Qadira in the courts, but we tried anyway, and they allowed it, even though they weren't supposed to. In discovery, though, we learned that Scott Kocher was actually mentored by Rex Burkholder, a prominent politician here in Portland, and that's Todd Burkholder's brother. So it all started to kind of culminate into this really big, huge case of corruption. These people were covering up. They whitewashed the crimes using the court system, using the hospitals. They tried to whitewash the crimes, and then they tried to get us to believe that nothing happened to our daughter and that we were just making a big deal.
Let me get this right. So Sophie's uncle was a mentor to the attorney that was hired.
Yes.
He's Rex Burkholder,
which is a flagrant conflict of interest.
Yes, absolutely.
And but
he didn't tell us that.
I mean, that was just another thing that was withheld from us throughout the process. And that I guess I wanted to also not forget to bring up the fact that we did appeal this. So we did get one attorney, Andy Simran, after Scott, to appeal it, but he basically just stole our money.
Yeah, we had to borrow $10,000
to file this appeal
from a family member
because oh wait, I don't want to forget this. When we tried to get the case remanded, I went before Judge Michael McShane as Qadira's guardian ad litem.
He was mainly a criminal,
judge. So I don't even.
And he was the one who oversaw the civil case.
Right. He actually dismissed, because the case was dismissed with prejudice. I mean, that's on the paperwork. Dismissed with prejudice, like basically can never come before the court again. So then when when Andy filed the appeal, he once again didn't tell us that this was a case of child abuse and child neglect, and that it shouldn't have been civil or anything like that. And
we have tried to take it to the bar.
And so at the time, the attorney general here, Ellen Rosenblum, was an appellate judge at the time, and she actually signed off on this.
She sat on the panel of appellate judges who were was reviewing the case.
They reviewed the case and they awarded these people more
Even
money.
more money.
And they just basically shut us down again.
And that was before Ellen Rosenblum actually became the Attorney General here in the state of Oregon.
Yeah, and we've actually watched quite a few people who have been involved with covering up the abuse of Qadira be promoted.
Yes.
Throughout the years.
Like
to hire-
Judge McShane, he's now a federal judge.
Right, and same with Judge Adrienne Nelson. She was another person that was involved.
She's now sitting on the Supreme Court, the Oregon Supreme Court.
Yeah, so we've been seeing these judges move through the system,
Move up
and
in the ranks.
we've been in front of a lot of them just ourselves. So, I mean, we could throw out a lot of names, and that is what is included in my book. I don't leave any names out of my book because this has all been quote unquote litigated. That's what they like to say. Oh, you've been to court, even though the only trial we ever went to was the one where they said they were playing Little House on the Prairie, and that's the only trial we ever saw, and where these people walked away. And so
scot-free.
Completely scot-free. And
with impunity, no, they weren't held responsible or accountable in any way, shape, or form.
We've paid. We've had liens been put on our house. We've paid thousands of dollars since our daughter fighting this and trying to go up against these people. All they've done is try to penalize us in every way possible for speaking about what happened, because they don't want to discuss it whatsoever.
So we went actually from the county court to the federal court with our case against the hospitals, against the attorneys, against the courts, against the county, and we were they just batted us away. They just shut us down in summary judgment. No trial. They didn't even try to determine any of the facts. They just summary judgment. Get out of here. And then they told us that our lawsuits were frivolous and that we can't even, now we're not even allowed to file any more paperwork in the federal court on this matter.
Yeah, and I think I told you earlier, Judge Michael Mossman just kind of took the whole thing and said, this is based on the alleged burns of Qadira, like she wasn't even burned and that she's not a real person or something like that.
They said the game was a
Little House on the Prairie. Somebody's asking the question.
Okay, so people are asking about this. I'm gonna share a little bit of what I know, because this is a game that a lot of sexual predators have used in the past to basically whitewash a lot of their crimes, and it gets people off their game. They don't really know what it is, so they're able to abuse children sexually and emotionally. So it's a way for people to, and for pedophiles to get away with murder, pretty much.
These people,
yeah, they really did turn
this
into we were just playing a game, and like I was telling you, we've taken a lot of abuse from our neighbors, because actually after this happened, when Sophie went back to school and the teacher had her stand up and tell everybody in the second grade, this is a group of second graders, had her tell everybody what happened at her house. And I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but obviously when my daughter returned to school, so the teachers were well aware. This was at Peters Elementary.
None of the teachers contacted DHS, despite them all being mandatory reporters.
But also it was very difficult, because when my daughter did eventually get back to school, I mean, everybody's kind of shunning her, kind of making fun of her. She's disfigured. They didn't do there was no counseling, no help, no interventions whatsoever.
Yes.
So it was a really difficult.
She was naked when she got burned.
Yeah, completely naked when she was burned. So, and everybody just kind of made light of it. And then after the trial, when we went to the school and showed them the pictures of the burn and showed them that they had used school materials to justify this game they were playing, the school just said that we could take our daughter and get out of the Odyssey program, and that Todd and Amy and Sophie stay. And so we ended up having to put her into the program on the other side of the school, and then just basically do our best to make sure that these people stayed away from her. But occasionally Todd did weird things, like came up and tried to talk to her.
Yeah, he was trying to talk to her,
which was really weird and scary for her. And they were up there. They were literally up there all the time.
Yes. Volunteering at the school.
And then the more we tried to pursue this, we eventually did. I told you we eventually did end up blowing up pictures of the burn on her leg and like hanging a sign on her house. We said, "Ask the state of Oregon why it's covering up child abuse." I mean, because this was infuriating because we were watching her deteriorate. So she was burned at the end of second grade, and it was, I think, the end of sixth grade.
Oregon.
She went into
Oregon is the state.
Oregon failure, and just a little bit after she got sent home from outdoor school. And then I had her at the doctor, and she was still being seen at OHSU at the time, and they just kept telling me she was fine. And it was during, like, when I tried to actually talk to OHSU about her records and they started stonewalling me, that's when I realized, okay, I don't trust these people anymore. So when she went into Oregon failure, we ended up taking her to Emmanuel, and it was over a holiday weekend. It was 4th of July. So I think it was July 5th, actually. She almost died that night. And so she was in the ICU.
We wound up taking her to Legacy Emmanuel.
Yeah, that's where we took her. But they still didn't, they asked if she had ever had a traumatic injury. I don't know. It'd be interesting to get those medical records because those are medical records we sought, but it'd be interesting to see what exactly.
And if she was to make application to get that medical record, she can do it now because she's of the age of majority. But she could go and request those. And it'd be really interesting to see, especially since we have the medical records, pretty much 100% of the medical record here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
what's missing, I think, is just, she never went back and got those. And then also from just like 5 months later, she had a massive fracture. Our dog hit her leg and her leg just snapped in half. And then that's kind of when I started looking into burns, and I realized that they cause, your bones to degrade basically if you don't get proper nutrition and help. And I demanded they do a DEXA scan on her, and she came back with osteopenia.
Yeah, she has the bone density of an 80-year-old woman.
Basically. So,
and we've been trying to correct that since we learned about it with vitamin D supplementation, but she's just not getting she did not get any of the help that she was supposed to.
And she still didn't, because when the osteopenia came to light, they just referred her back to OHSU, and we said, well, we can't take her to OHSU because they're not telling us what's going on here. And so she kind of has just gone. Things haven't necessarily been resolved for her medically. I mean, she looks okay, but like what the truth is, we haven't really dialed down into the truth of what's actually going on, because people are still very cagey and dishonest, because all the doctors know, like, they know about the burn. It's just nobody wants to talk.
We did, however, when she went into DKA, we learned about the burn center, and we actually went to the burn center, and we talked to a burn doctor by the name of Joseph Polito, and he told us that with the diagnosis that we received that night, that she should have been transferred immediately to the burn center. There she would have gotten fluid replacement, all kinds of everything that she should have gotten that night she was burned. So,
but he's also very cagey. Like they still didn't.
And he was very nervous when he was talking to
and they
us.
didn't want to take her on as a patient and help us troubleshoot what was missed in the first place. So that's why we still don't really know. I mean, since she got no treatment, I mean, I realize now, because I've read more about burns. I mean, there's just a lot more things that she's at risk for, obviously, because who knows she was in a completely unsterile environment and all of that,
We do need, she does need representation. We could use representation, but right now with this, the state of things, like we can't even get this thing investigated. So there is a huge network that we feel full of doctors, judges, attorneys, police officers, federal agents, because we tried to go to the FBI after all of this went down, after we learned about what the hospitals were up to and what the courts did. We tried to get the corruption investigated by the feds, and they now, I've tried multiple times, and they hang up on us. They refuse to deal with any of this. As a matter of fact, the last time that I was on a phone with a federal officer, I was trying to explain and report this corruption and the child abuse, and the lady told me that maybe it was just an accident. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't just an accident, because these people said they were playing a game, and she hung up on me. So I don't understand what's going on here, but it's sickening. It's disgusting. There's a lot of, like I said, corruption. There's a lot of racism. These people have been able to get away with everything.
Well, they've really been able to get away with silencing us, because I have, like,
they've turned our community against us.
Yeah, I've tried to reach out to media, and it's been silent. I've reached out to all the local media here, and then I've also tried to reach out to other media platforms. And really, you're the first person that has really taken this on, and I mean, we're just so grateful to have an opportunity to talk. But I think what it comes down to is when authorities commit crimes, I mean, there's just a network there to completely cover it up.
Yeah,
they don't have
protect these.
They don't have one. They didn't even. It's like my friend said. They said when we showed up at the hospital, and we were at two different reputable hospitals. I mean, they didn't even pull out their checklist last night or that night or in the following days. Nobody did. It was just they didn't care if she dropped dead. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Now, in comparison to, we have a friend named Abby Cruz, whose husband was,
he's a vet. I told him
vet.
that. He's a vet, and he fell down the stairs holding their 4-month-old baby. And he's an Hispanic guy, and he's being charged with 8 felony counts of child abuse. When they rushed their child to I think first to Kaiser, and then they were transferred over to OHSU, where they were immediately accused of abuse. Had all their kids removed for a year, and now he's sitting in prison, and she's still they're trying to fight this. But the bottom line is
how could
they pulled it. They were subjected to an investigation right away.
They didn't call the police. That was the doctors did that, and they were accused of abuse right away. And
they're not taking his word for it. And like I said, he's passed 2 psychological exams, a lie detector test, and taken parenting classes, and they still have robbed him of everything, and he's sitting in jail.
And he has cancer.
This was a broken arm.
Dying.
This was a broken arm. And so, and he did fall down the stairs. At least that's what they said. And nobody, and like I said, passed the lie detector test. Nobody cares about that. But these people are sitting here. They said they were playing Little House on the Prairie, and they burned up our kid. And it's been no
court
and no apology. Like after the trial, Todd ran around the neighborhood crowing that he won. So, and people were laughing at us, laughing at my daughter. We would get nasty looks up at the school. She was excluded from things. I mean, this was a social nightmare because every single person knew there was no protection. I mean, like when you're saying, protecting where we live, there was no protection at all during this entire time. No effort to keep anything private. So this was all over the neighborhood, and it still is, which is like I sent some messages like how you get still mocked and abused online. I'm called crazy, delusional. I'm the crazy tea kettle lady that, I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill. There was an attorney on Quora that got on there. Oh, it was just a little 6-inch burn. No big deal. These people are just, out for money. That's been the big thing, which Todd, like I said, in his deposition, we found out oh, he actually started
Started a
telling,
rumor.
he says in there, oh, I told Susan, whoever the hell that is, like the first day, that's what I think this was about.
Susan was the first insurance adjuster that they talked to.
I mean, the police would have to do an investigation, but I mean, there is that, yes, this rumor got started that, oh, we just wanted money. A lot of people say, oh, well, you only called the police after the civil trial. And it's like, because we didn't know what happened. And we really honestly thought Scott was looking into it. And it didn't occur to me.
Child abuse attorney.
It didn't occur to us to do anything more.
We trusted all of these people. We trusted the attorneys. We trusted the doctors. And
also at the time, not only was my husband, did he have trouble at work, and he had to file a complaint against Nike. And like I said, he was fired with an open EEOC charge pending because he was sexually assaulted on the Nike campus.
That's something we can get into later.
Yeah, that's later. But then his dad died. Then our daughter, so his dad died on March 20th. Then our daughter was burned on April 12th. Then my husband was completely fired and blacklisted by August from Nike. And then our other daughter, our youngest daughter, almost died from Kawasaki syndrome. So this all happened in the space of like a few months. And so we get attacked a lot. Like, why weren't you going to the police? Well, we got an attorney. We just thought he was dealing with it. And I mean, when we went to the trial, I didn't expect for there not to be police. I don't know what I expected out of it.
We didn't have any time to think outside of taking care of the therapist. That's what they charged us with. They charged us with her actual physical care.
And so every little thing, like we were
everything that we did, everything that happened after that was to take care of Kadira.
And all we've done is, for us, it was just observation and trying to take care of her. I mean, if she wasn't breathing right, I took her to the doctor. You know, the rashes, I tried to change her diet, like all the things that were happening because they never helped. When I took her to the doctor, she was having breathing problems 3 weeks after she was burned. They just said, oh, she just has anxiety. Here's an inhaler.
Yeah, they gave her an inhaler.
Here she has a massive, I'd like to send you pictures of what the lake looked like while it just basically looked like this. Well, you saw it on the sign, like a big bruised,
it was modeled.
It was infected and mottled skin. So
which we didn't understand. We didn't know what we were.
They were just saying, "Oh, she's fine. Here's an inhaler." Like they
never stabilized her. She was never stabilized.
And then since there was no mental help or any services or anything for us to grasp onto, it's just two young people. I mean, we were 28 and 29 at the time, trying to sort of wade through what just kept being thrown at us. And then Scott would call occasionally and say, "Oh, things were going fine," and that he was handling it.
He would have me down to his office with Kadira, and he would take pictures of her burn. But nothing was handled in any official capacity.
But I mean, that's another thing. Scott was like opening her up to making her as a 8-9-year-old come down to his office and take these pictures and stuff when he's not. You know, I realize now, like, he's not a psychotherapist. He's not a police officer. He's not anybody that should have been doing that. That is even more re-victimization. And the only time she was ever interviewed, and I told you this earlier in our earlier conversation, the only time she was ever interviewed was, I believe, in February. There were depositions that Scott and Rudy put on. And I was interviewed, and then Kadira was interviewed. And both of our interviews, actually, were done in front of Amy. So the only time my daughter was ever questioned was by a hostile attorney, the other family's attorney, in front of her abuser. They brought Amy into the room and she sat there glaring at her. And then Todd was also there as well. They didn't keep him in the room while she was talking, but they made sure Amy was in there, and Amy was very hostile the entire time. And that was the only interview.
And I'm just so we're clear, when your daughter was being interviewed or deposed in front of her abuser, were you guys actually allowed in the room?
I was there.
I wasn't there. I was at work.
Scott, counsel for the name, didn't need to be there. He just said, "Oh, just you and Kadira."
And then after the depositions, then they deposed Todd and Amy, and Scott told Corellin that she didn't need to be involved in that at all.
Yeah, so I didn't sit in on.
And
I didn't want to be, because honestly, like, it was terrifying. all I can explain to you is like when he took us to those depositions, like I felt like something was wrong. I felt scared. It didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
We have
And from experience, if they're doing a deposition, she would have gotten deposed. You and her and the attorney. That's how it would be. They would ask you questions. The other party wouldn't be in the room.
That's not what happened. Yeah.
But that's what an actual deposition.
Oh, that's what
When you are in a deposition, a true deposition, the hostile party is not in the same room.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not how that went down.
I see a question here asking if any of the state legislators can help. So we believe that because Rex Burkholder is a prominent politician here and the brother of the abuser, we believe that we have contacted all of our state local representatives. We have contacted, and they have not helped us in any way, shape, or form. We've been advised to go get an attorney.
What did Jeff Merkley's office say?
Oh,
they said following the law is optional. Following the law.
Oh yeah, from Jeff Merkley's office.
Following the law is optional.
Our very own federal or senator.
Yeah, it's up to your own moral code.
So we've been trying to talk to every single person that we can. We've contacted every single agency that we can.
Even Caris Northwest refused when after our daughter, when we found out what happened, they refused to evaluate her or make a determination on what happened as well.
We've contacted the Oregon Medical Board. We've contacted the Oregon Health Authority. We've contacted the Oregon State Bar. We've filed complaints with the Judicial Board of Fitness,
Independent Police Review, Internal Affairs. I mean, it's a mountain of paperwork.
One thing is constant, is a constant theme, is that every single institution that we talk to, every single agency, they refuse to investigate this at all.
Well,
and actually the DA told us, after we went to the police, we tried to talk to the DA, and the DA said, well, I can't do anything without an investigation. And the police continue to refuse to investigate what happened to our daughter.
So, and that's just been the running theme. Like the police are kind of standing between us and the investigation, but I don't know it's pretty clear to us that the police are just being told what to do in this situation. We had very strict laws in place. In 2007 is actually when Carly's law passed.
The same,
and so they had even tightened the screws down on child abuse law that same year.
Are you there? Did I lose you?
Oh no.
Okay. Are you there?
what were you saying?
Oh, I can't. We got all distracted.
Sorry.
Are we back on?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Carly Sheehan. So they actually created some more legislation reinforcing the child abuse laws and tightening up the child abuse laws. So the month that she was abused was the month that they actually introduced the law.
Because that's actually child abuse prevention.
And it was made law in May of 2007, and this was still allowed to go on even outside of that law, or even within the statutes of that law.
So,
and I actually, so they said, is there a statute of limitations on it? I actually pulled up the Oregon statute of limitations on child abuse because I was just curious. And it says beginning in 2016 that it really doesn't do too much, but it says 3 years after discovering abuse. Well, quite honestly, you guys not only discovered it, you reported it,
Yes.
Mhm.
and all that within 3 years and a stonewalled investigation. So technically speaking, and this is, I mean, you may not ever be able to file a civil case, but because you've made the report prior to that 3-year rule, you may still have a case.
No, I believe she definitely does have a case, actually, because it was filed. We did report it within her statute of limitations.
And
so.
because her attorney was never doing anything for her. Like, he literally, like, the guy should be jailed and disbarred. I can't believe they have allowed this guy out. Not just the people who abused her, this attorney and this other attorney and this judge. Like, everybody we've kind of come into contact with, it's kind of like these people need to be looked into. But Scott in particular, I mean, I don't know why he wasn't
He's
arrested.
a child abuse attorney.
A child abuse attorney, and he abused my daughter.
Yeah.
Like, he should be jailed now.
And I'm just curious. So the original lawyer that you guys originally talked to,
Yes,
the one that helped you with your injury.
He didn't
do anything.
call the
He
police
didn't
or
call the
DHS.
police either. Nobody ever called the police.
We really do believe that has something to do with the political ties that Rex Burkholder had with the entire state.
And also, I have to say, I also think it's something to do with the political ties. But we've also come to believe that there may be some sort of underground system already set up here to put abused kids through, because this just went down without a hitch.
Yeah, it was all seamless.
And no matter who we've reported to, they all do the same thing. They all behave the same way. They just pretend it didn't happen. And
they refused to look into it.
When our daughter was going to Harriet Tubman Middle School, because when Harriet Tubman turned into an all-girls school, she was over there for a while. They did sort of like a segment on I guess there's a lot of kids being trafficked up and down the I-5. And me and my husband just began to wonder, like, is there something going on in our hospitals where, if these kids are coming through, they're just being put in and out of back door with certain doctors? Because, I mean, it's like they intercepted my call and told me not to come back to the hospital. When I took her back to the hospital, I took her to Providence, then took her to OHSU, then I called, then I took her in again. I saw multiple different doctors who threw her basically out the door and didn't tell me the truth and were dishonest and basically were out to hurt my daughter. So how do you orchestrate something like that? I'm very curious, because everywhere we've gone, every door we've knocked on, it has never been about the protection of our child's health and safety, ever. And there, even as the injuries mounted up, and even in my own neighborhood, I've been accused of people, because I've been pretty active just in my own social media account. Going through the distress and everything. But I've had people say, oh, you have Munchausen by proxy and this and that. And it's like, yeah, if the state believed that when they send somebody over here to talk to me, wouldn't there be a record on anything going on here? But no, there never was. So I just wonder what's going on in the state of Oregon, just in general. And I worry about not just my daughter. We don't just worry about our daughter, but we worry about other kids here.
Yeah, just in the state of Oregon with this kind of thing going on. Obviously there is serious corruption. We believe that we were actually targeted because we're people of color,
especially in this neighborhood.
We
moved in. We're at least 10 years younger.
I looked at the demographic. Our neighborhood is 91% white. So I think that these people targeted us because they knew that they could get away with abusing our daughter.
And I'm certain Todd has gotten away with, not just abusing his own kid, but I'm sure Todd and Amy have abused other kids, because this is how shut down we've been. And we've been pretty vocal and loud. Maybe kind of behind the scenes with the paperwork, but I've been pretty loud on social media. And honestly, because this has been such a strange circumstance, friends, family, like people, they just give up, forget about it, walk away. But it's like Kadira's injuries were so extensive, and this was so traumatizing. We wake up living this every single day
Since that
like
happened.
this isn't over until there's an explanation. I mean, I've said in my speeches down in the square, like, people are going to be held accountable. They are going to be put in the hot seat. And these people have never believed that they were ever going to be held accountable. But I mean, me and my husband, we know in our heart of heart that God saved our daughter.
Yes.
Because we did not save our daughter,
No.
because we did not have the capacity
We didn't have
or
the
the
ability.
tools to save our daughter. So she's alive for a reason, and this story exists for a reason. And the insane amount of corruption happening in Oregon, and the disingenuous, behavior of our public officials up here, of our governor, of our mayor, of our city council, these riots where, like I said, we get no support from these so-called racial justice warriors that are apparently all over the city. No, we haven't gotten any help. So I don't know what's happening here in Oregon, but this has been going on, and that's my book. And that is, I just want everybody to know, some people find it a hard read. Not a lot of people have read it. If you can read it and review it, that would be great.
It's not professionally
It's
edited,
not-
obviously.
it's
She wrote the book, and I put it together, and we were just trying to get our story out there.
And I
So-
tried to make it just a little bit more. It's the story, but it's a little bit more digestible, and it really kind of goes a little bit more into detail with everything that we were dealing with at the time, because I think it's hard for people to understand. I don't know. We feel like we've been really we've been on trial this entire time. Even though we do the best we can, but that story, I mean, my husband also behind the scenes was in court with Nike for 9 years, and that's another thing that's been hidden up here in Oregon for a long time. So that book, this situation it almost killed both him and me in terms of just the depression, the stress, trying to hold down, make a living while this was going on. He's
trying to take care of our kids.
Yeah. And I mean, we have 4 kids, and right now they're 16, 17, 20, and 22. And they're all still here at home.
But they've also been deeply affected by what's happened here to us. And
because it's every day. It's every day we wake up going, how did these people do this to her? And it's every day for her because, like I said, she did have organ failure. She is a type 1 diabetic now, and she still suffers from complications with her burned leg and the other leg that snapped, because it literally snapped in half. So it's her right leg is held together with 4 titanium screws, and her left leg was the burned leg. So
and her left leg actually does occasionally randomly just give out.
Right, because there was no
Yeah.
the ligaments and everything are all messed up. So she so there's just it's daily watching her suffer. And then also she didn't do normal things like go off to college and stuff like that, because I mean she's had a lot of
There's been a lot of upheaval
and just
a lot
depression and things for her to, it's been a fight for her. She's a strong person, but it's been a fight for her every single day.
and every single time we've brought her to the police and they've just brushed her off like she didn't even matter at all, has been a real big blow to her psyche, her emotional state. She doesn't trust the government at all. She doesn't actually think that she's going to get justice in any way now at this point. And it's just caused a lot of depression and heartache for our entire family. And we are so over the moon about this. I can't even express to you like how much we fought and tried to get some kind of understanding or
And and quite honestly, I'm going to be focused more on getting the answers out of the court, out of Kate Brown's office, the Attorney General's office. And I think a lot of the people that have heard what you guys have been talking about tonight, I know it's getting late for some of the people that are coming in from the East Coast. And Sam just asked, what format, because people do want to support your guys' fight. Even it just sharing this helps. But I mean, talking about purchasing books and getting people reading the book, what format does provide you guys a larger percentage so you guys could continue to fund doing what you guys do?
We do have a Cash App that we opened up for donations to help us fight, because our entire fight has been all on our own dime. Like, we bought this PA equipment so we can go speak out
we've never actually gotten a donation or any help at this point. I mean, we've just gotten
and quite honestly, that's people are curious. I mean, you could see like Sam talking about it, especially with your book, because you want people to read the book. Absolutely.
Yes. The book really it makes the story a lot more digestible. The legal work is very hard for some people to read. Yes. Like, if you don't understand, first of all, that we shouldn't even have been in there representing ourselves. People get very confused and caught up in the stories these attorneys tried to spin, and then they don't understand what happened. They can't get down to the heart of the matter. So,
Sam just asked, is there a difference between the paperback and the ebook?
No, I think it's just the same. Yeah, I think it's just the same.
Actually, I think that I think there is a bigger percentage if you do the digital version. I think. Because there's no production costs.
Yeah.
But
I wanted to add. I'll get the Cash App, the donation stuff, the GoFundMe, all that stuff for you guys. We'll get that information, and we will post that.
We do have a petition on change.org.
I'm not sure what we're getting done with it, but we're just trying to get people to sign it, because
right now we're focused on the mayor and Commissioner Hardesty.
But the governor's a good one too. I mean, any egg you can crack up here is good, because they don't have a like I said, they don't have anything to say. There's nothing. They're standing on basically nothing. It's a complete house of cards. They have nothing, and that's why they're hanging up on you, and that's why they've been hanging up on us. There's just nothing to say. They should have done things completely differently, and they didn't. And the fact of the matter is Kadira lives, and she can testify about this. I mean, she's never really set foot in a courtroom to talk about anything that happened to her. So, and neither really have we, not in truth.
So we're trying to put pressure on the city right now. Like I said, Mayor Ted Wheeler, Commissioner Hardesty. We're trying to get. We would like a police investigation into what happened to our daughter, which we've been asking for the past 14 years. But we really hope that an investigation will help us uncover just how the system is corrupt, who was involved,
how did they do
what type
this?
of influence?
How did they orchestrate this? How did they keep it covered up for so long? One more thing I wanted to say about my book. If you read it, if you can leave me a review on Amazon, it really helps, because once you get to 25 reviews, then Amazon actually helps promoting the book. So that kind of, and that is the most digestible format of our book. But I just want to warn everybody, it's a very raw book. I'm very true. I don't mince any words, and I have not changed a single name. So it will be very jaw-dropping for anybody that reads it. The fact that Nike hasn't tried to file suit over this, or somebody hasn't tried to file suit, because every single judge that we went in front of, they're in that book. There's law enforcement names in there. There's all kinds of stuff, and then our names are. I didn't change any of our names either. I mean, that book was written from the heart. And so it's kind of more like a diary
really kind of raw
of what happened and how we struggled to just stay okay while we were fighting this, and how we fought it. because it took a tremendous amount of work. A lot of what
And a
you
large
read,
toll.
yeah, and a lot of what you read in the doc share, a lot of that, well, if you go into the actual court files, I mean, we personally wrote all those briefs. And I mean, a lot of nights we'd stay up all night and work all day. Like, we have just fought and fought and fought and fought for our daughter and fought for justice, and also been more and more horrified of what we've seen, of how dismissive
And how irresponsible.
yeah, our public officials are of this system that, I mean, I wrote in court briefs. I mean, people fought and died for this country. How dare you treat the system this way?
Yeah, they're just spitting on the law, and they broke every single law, every single protocol, every single everything.
It's not okay. And it's literally, that's other people's blood, and you're just acting like you can sit there and,
So
because you have the authority, do whatever you want.
really quickly, I want to tackle this question. Where does Nike come in? So during the time that that our daughter was abused, I was sexually harassed I used to be a footwear designer at Nike. I worked at the World campus, the World headquarters in Beaverton, and a designer. I was a junior designer working under the mentorship of two designers, Randy Wolf and Corey McCullough. And Randy actually tried to, he tried to dry hump me on the campus, on the World headquarters campus, and I complained about it.
And he did it to Corey.
He did it to Corey in front of me too, so I knew what he was doing when he tried to do it to me, and I complained about it, and Nike treated me like I was the problem. And the reason why they got involved was we wound up, I tried to sue Nike. We got an attorney. She tried to snuff me out like 10 days before my statute of limitations had run out, when I wanted to go after Nike in court. She told me she wasn't going to help me. So I wound up filing a pro se brief in the Washington County Court. Anyway, long story short, I actually started litigation against Nike, and they got Stoll Reeves to fight me, which is one of the biggest law firms here on the West Coast. So, and what we learned was that Scott Kocher and Richard Van Gelesti had just come from Stoll Reeves.
So that was another
right
connection.
before they took our daughter's case. So Nike knew about our daughter's abuse, and we believe that somehow they were connected because I was suing Nike.
Nike was not happy with my husband for
No,
suing
not at all.
them, because they gave him a letter stating, and it's in the file, that this happened. So when he went to the EEOC, my husband literally thought, this was in March, I think March 5th of 2007. What we thought is he would just go to the EEOC because he went to HR, and HR said that they did an investigation, and that he just needs to go back to work with
They
Randy.
wanted me to continue working with this guy. I didn't feel comfortable.
And he
with
said,
that. I
and
just
he
want you
didn't
to
want to,
move.
yeah, he said, I just don't want to work with the guy. Can't you move me? And the Nike campus is huge. I mean, literally, if you've seen it, it looks like Disneyland. They should have just moved him. And they refused. So he filed the equal opportunity complaint, and he thought the EEOC was just going to pick up the phone and say, hey, move him. Like, we thought it was going to be that simple. And no, Nike just basically was enraged by that. And
That's what it seems like.
that's
anyway.
what it seems like,
And-
because they
and-
ended up just firing him with open EEOC charges. So the reason he filed the lawsuit is because the EEOC bled us for months, because my husband had to take out his retirement when our other daughter almost died. We had no insurance, so we had to pay. We were spending all of our money on insurance because she had Kawasaki syndrome and her heart had to be monitored and all this stuff. This was our other little daughter who was 4 at the time. So that was, by the time the EEOC gave him the indeterminate findings, they just said indeterminate, and they didn't do anything they didn't penalize Nike in any way. And then my husband had 90 days to sue. And then an attorney here in town by the name of Misha Shari took his case because she was like, oh my God, it's all here. because my husband had 8 years of good reviews. He had the letter from Nike saying, you know, we did an investigation. We determined this stuff basically went on. She said it was all going to be fine. And then 10 days before the case needed to be filed, she called him up and said, you know, you went crazy because your dad died. You're not filing your case. Dude. So
basically, we believe that Nike had a hand in setting up this fake trial to cause us severe emotional distress.
I mean,
Which
that's kind of how, and that's kind of what I talk about in the book, because
this is the kind of distress that would drive somebody to commit a crime, a heinous crime. So I honestly believe that they were trying to get me to kill somebody, either Todd or Amy or somebody, so that I would no longer be a problem for Nike. Because if I got arrested, then obviously Nike wouldn't have to be litigating against me anymore
or dealing with him whatsoever. And it's interesting because in our daughter's case, I was the one that picked her up the night she was burned. So initially they said, you know, so I was the one that actually went to the house and saw what happened. You know, I was the first person to get her. So initially Scott said that Renee didn't even need to be deposed in her case at all. And then after he filed against Nike, then suddenly Scott, and we weren't putting 2 and 2 together at the time, Scott said, oh, Renee needs to be deposed. So actually the biggest deposition in my daughter's case was his.
Even more than Todd and
they
Amy,
asked him,
even more than Kadira.
And he witnessed nothing. I mean, he didn't even go. He wasn't even there when I went to go pick her up.
So something about that seemed really strange.
And they asked him. I mean, when you get into the depositions, I mean, they basically really flout all of the laws because they get into the minutia of his life in that deposition, like trying to, I guess, figure out what our deal was. Which really, I mean, I went to Jefferson High School. We met at Jeff. We've been married for 22 years, almost 22 years now. Mm-hmm. We've been together for 25 years. And I've lived where I live pretty much my entire life. Moved out for a while when we first got married. But then the house that we live in is actually the house I grew up in. So, I mean, been in the area for a long time. And there's just really nothing. There's nothing about us besides we're just a normal regular family. And my husband is self-taught, so he started at Adidas, like picking up garbage in the model shop, and then eventually he moved into color design, and then he eventually was able to
move over to Nike
in color design, and then
I got a job as a
footwear designer. But the interesting thing about being up at Nike is he never got a promotion the entire time he was there, really. Even when they moved him to footwear design, it was a lateral move.
Which was one of the reasons why I filed for race discrimination. But, I mean, Nike, we really do feel like all of this kind of culminated in the big cover-up of what happened to our daughter.
But the cover-up had already started the night she was burned because, I mean,
but it was even a bigger cover-up
yeah.
After, I filed a case against Nike. So we're just trying to expose everything here. Obviously, there is a serious amount of corruption going on, and if we can't get people to really look at it and really dig their hands into it, and if we can't get like a serious official investigation, I believe that this type of thing is going to continue to happen in our court system, in the healthcare system. There's going to be deep racism that we're not even addressing. And
it's not just racism, it's also economic oppression. I mean, you're poor, you don't know anything. A lot of people go into the legal system. I mean, we knew nothing, so they just danced circles around us.
Yeah,
and really what happened.
They made sure that we could not get any kind of representation at all.
Yeah, and that's what's pretty disgusting about the community here. There you go. Yeah, they just admit to it.
So I actually, while you guys were chatting, covered the comments over here. I was actually scrolling through this, all the information that you sent me earlier, and I actually got to the deposition part, mm-hmm. where they deposed your daughter, mm-hmm. and I mean, I'm sure people could probably. I think can you guys see that all right?
I can see it okay.
But I mean, basically how they whitewash the whole thing, and
Mhm.
I've already pinpointed where they whitewash the whole thing. Do you want me to have my mom get hot water and pour it in the tub so it's hotter? And it says that her response was yes or yeah. That's why if it was, quite honestly, and I'm not no legal expert, but that right there was probably why they did it. Even though it goes on to say, so you were in the tub before the hot water came in. Yeah. How long? We were playing in there for a while, and then when Amy came in with the hot boiling water, Sophie stood to one side of the corner of the tub, and I stood on the other side. And when she was pouring the hot water, I slipped, and then it got on me. The hot water got on me, and then she stopped pouring.
Mhm.
So, guys, when you really, as where, and this is kind of disgusting, because I have seen transcripts like this. But first of all, she's given this testimony in front of her accuser.
Yep.
Yeah, in front of the abuser.
Yes.
So we are definitely, we've ran about an hour and a half, hour 36 minutes in, and I definitely want to dive even deeper into this very shortly in regards to within the next day or so. Actually get you guys on it and dive even further into the documents.
Okay.
And be actually hammered down into some of this stuff so we could actually expose people for who they are. And it gives me the chance to see who all the players are and actually have profiles built on these people.
Okay.
Okay.
Because hold on one second. Because when you're going to build a case against somebody and you want to build a case, you want to have a profile of each player that's involved and where their money ties come from. Because if you're going to build a corruption case through an interview process like what we're doing,
Mhm.
and you're going to have you're going to throw a pretty incendiary accusation, we want to make sure that we're sharing the backup evidence to that. And I don't want to distract or take away from anything that you guys are sharing, because what you guys are sharing is extremely emotionally touching. And I think a lot of people have been paying attention and rapt attention pretty much the whole time. But what I want to do is I'm going to break it up. We're going to break it up into a couple parts, and we're going to dive in and actually discuss these players and discuss how they tie together. Because in order for corruption to exist, there has to be a money trail.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure
you can. Well, I mean, and for those that read the book, I mean, I make my assertions as to what I believe actually went on. Because you will read in the book that the day that our daughter's case was closed definitively, it was October 28th, 2008, I believe. It was the same day Phil Knight gave OHSU $100 million. So he gave it to them, presumably. He gave it to Joe Robertson. Joe Robertson ended up using it for
the Knight Cancer Institute.
But
Phil gave it directly.
But he gave it to Joe on that same day. So one of the things is, I'll look in the doc share and I'll find you the document, but
Yeah.
research in there. But it's just a letter from the police. For me, it was October 29th. I can actually Google that because everything is Googleable.
It
when
might
it comes
be
to
the
Nike,
next day or the same day.
no, it was the same day. Which we've always kind of wondered like what that was all about, because it's the police who have really stood in our way in terms of getting
an investigation
into this in any capacity. So and what it looks like to us, and what I talk about in the book is that Rex shut it down initially. Like, he's the one that got Kidira kicked out of the hospital and stuff like that, and he set the ball in motion. But Nike was happy with that result, and when the money changed hands, and you'll see it's in the doc share there, OHSU was well aware that our daughter was in an internal distress, and they were not communicating that to us. So
yeah. And we're going to dive. We will dive even further into it and actually discuss it and go through the money, following that money, because quite honestly, we want people to hear the full story and actually be
I'm
able
going to send you the link to that article really quick. Sorry, go ahead.
and completely dive into it, because it is important for people to understand.
Yes, we believe so.
One thing we are definitely looking forward to is I personally will probably be flying out there. I'm not 100% sure when, but we're gonna raise some cane. And
that sounds good. That sounds good, because I really think that opening this up here in terms of what's going on in Portland, I think some light needs to be shed, because I'm not sure why they're letting these people burn down the town when it's not. Well, clearly they're not.
We know why they're allowing it.
Yeah,
but the reason behind it is a fox.
Yes,
right.
That is true.
It's fake. But guys, I do appreciate you guys coming on and sharing a little bit of your story tonight. We are definitely going to be having you guys back on to go even further into it. I appreciate everybody that has tuned in as well. And I will be posting the link for donations, the book on Amazon. And do you guys have a website?
We don't have a website. What we have is a Facebook group, and we have an Instagram that we're just starting to populate, and we have a Twitter. But that's pretty much.
We're not very social media savvy, but boy, we've been trying.
It's been hard.
One thing I will throw in for you guys is I will actually build you guys a website.
Oh, great!
That would be great.
That would be huge for us.
And basically a landing page for people to actually understand, see what's going on with you guys, and I'll take care of the cost. Don't worry about it.
Oh my God! You're an angel.
Yes, absolutely.
You're an angel.
We appreciate it so much.
Oh my God! Just to be able to get this out there, and then so much more. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do is actually clear the air. We're trying to actually clear our names, because we've been drugged through the mud, and people think that we are the criminals, that we are the bad people, and that's just not the case. Yeah. So
this is going to be a huge help.
But we're really hoping that this leads to some really serious systemic change in our system, because something is very wrong here in our society.
And I think if I can help be a catalyst for change, I definitely want to. And guys, like I say every single night to you guys have a pen and a microphone, use them.
Okay.
The silent majority can no longer stay silent. God bless you guys. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.